And welcome into the Monday edition, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership with a buzz is always about great service. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Monday morning. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. Joe Rexrode, how we doing? What's going on?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. I'm watching highlights. Oh, there's Steph Curry with a 28-footer fadeaway. Yeah, I'm just watching those highlights right behind you there. Little game one win for the Dubs. You better ask somebody. Dubs are coming for you, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, I feel bad for Houston. I don't think it's going to go well for them. I did. I watched 2 NBA playoff games yesterday in mostly totality.
Okay.
One of them being Thunder and Grizzlies, which was maybe the worst game I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was a real solid game. In fact, I mean, gosh, this was a good game. I mean, Houston did make it a game, but blowout city right now.
The Thunder could have won that game yesterday by 75 points if they wanted to. And, I mean, look, they did win by 50.
Yeah.
And they called off the dogs.
Yeah.
So they could have won that game by 75 to 80 points had they really wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be a fun series for Memphis.
Well, and to your point on the play-in, it's already like 1-8, is already usually quite a gap. And then you take the 8 that has to play 2, do or die games and have a day off and come travel to the 1. What do you think is going to, it makes it even more likely that you're going to have gross games like that.
It was disgusting.
But that was, something else.
It was extreme.
A special, higher level of disgusting.
It's like, wow, are the Oklahoma City Thunder the greatest basketball team in history? They sure looked like it yesterday. My goodness.
Yeah, they are good.
They're very good.
They're very good.
They're very good. My brother, who's been a long-time Oklahoma City Thunder fan, is very fired up. So we'll see how it goes.
Should be.
Ian Safar, how we doing? What's going on?
Doing great, thanks. Hope everybody had a nice long weekend. It was fun times with the kids outside. Good weather.
This was
hopefully everybody was good.
Yeah, I hate to say it because sometimes you say it prematurely, but it kind of feels like we've made it on the weather front. Like I think we're in the home stretch of it's going to be warm for the.
I mean, it was hot at times this weekend.
Yeah, so I think we're there.
Yeah, I think so.
I think the cold snaps may be done.
I think we're good. Yeah, and then I'm good with hot. Like maybe not quite as much as you are, but I also like. It looks like we're looking at high 70s all week. Like I'm cool with
fine.
Like
we can ease into
good.
it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
We got a big week this week, and we're going to get into a lot of different things today. Big week this week. Obviously, the NFL draft is this week, so we're going to spend a lot of time throughout the week preparing for that, getting more of your thoughts on the Titans. We'll do that throughout this show as well, particularly coming up in the 7 o'clock hour. Got some questions for Titans fans that I want to get to. It's also we're on Andrew Burnett watch right now. There's been nothing to this point about Andrew Burnett and whether or not he will continue to be the head coach next year for the Nashville Predators. Barry Trotz is scheduled to speak later this week. We have not been told specifically when that will be, but I do think it'll be kind of midweek, somewhere in that area. So Barry Trotz will be speaking later this week, and we'll see if there's some clarity at that point, one way or the other, on what's going on with the Andrew Burnett front. And, Joe, that's kind of where I want to pick up. The Predators had their end-of-season press conferences on Friday, and it was the players and Andrew Burnett. So the players went first. Burnett went after all that. Burnett spoke for about 30-something minutes, and we'll get into that a little bit later. I want to start, though, with some comments that made the rounds over the weekend from a question I had to Jonathan Marchessault. So Marchessault was kind of holding court, doing his thing, and I finally just asked him, like, adjustments, style of play. Like, what do you think that those things need to be changed? Like, how do you view the style of play that you guys have and what needs to change moving forward? And here is what Jonathan Marchessault had to say on Friday.
Is there anything specifically with the way you guys play, the style of play, that you would like to see adjusted heading into next year?
Yeah, clearly it didn't work.
Right.
So obviously there's going to be some adjustment to do. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a guy that has a lot of opinions, so I don't think I'm going to run them out right now. But, yeah, there's definitely adjustment. I think one of the things that we adjusted this year that I think was good is in our D zone, sometimes we had our winger a lot on the boards, and now they were more towards the middle, so we kept a lot of things towards the outside, and I think our D zone got better with that. That's one of the things that we did better this year, I think, from the beginning to the middle. So, yeah, I mean, obviously there's adjustment that needs to be done, and to be honest, my mindset is every team in the NHL should take a page of the books of the best teams in the NHL. I think they're the reason why they're there. Yes, they have sometimes they go up. They're at the cap. I think that's something that's super important to be competitive. But yeah, I think some of the teams that are the best, they do something really good to be there, and I think everybody needs to take a little bit of page of the good teams in the league. That's why that's why playoff hockey is the best hockey, because that's why you look at the teams, you like see how they play their game, their system, how they adjust certain situation, like, because I've had a lot of different coaches, and probably one of the best coaches I ever had was Bruce. And one thing, like me and him, we definitely headbutt each other, but he adjusts. He adjusts every game, and he's an unbelievable hockey mind. And there's a reason why they're so good. Obviously, they have the tools over there, but he's a guy that thinks the game super well, and that's something that I really enjoyed from him.
So a couple things on that, Joe. A long answer there from Jonathan Marchessault.
There's a lot there.
Let me just start with you. So you hear that he goes on this long kind of diatribe there about adjustments that, clearly what they did this year didn't work, and they got to find some different things to do moving forward. He talked about some changes they made to their D zone, but then, he talked about how if you want to be competitive in this league, you need to basically look at what the best teams in the league do, and you copy that. And it eventually circled back to Vegas, which frankly, lately, a lot of his comments have circled back to Vegas. And he went on basically like a love fest there for Bruce Cassidy, which also made the rounds at Vegas that they found very interesting over the weekend as well. Your thoughts on what Jonathan Marchessault had to say there?
I wouldn't call that like a huge endorsement of Andrew Brunette.
I would not either.
Yeah, that was interesting. There's a lot there. And inevitably, it kind of got around to, like, let me tell you about a coach I think is awesome, who I miss. And that's how you should do things. And so I think, he, I guess, danced around it. But, it kind of goes together with other stuff he said this year and just the whole idea. I think he's not happy, and I would suspect that people aren't happy with him, and so I think it's very interesting. I know we're going to get to Stamkos too. Like if you're Barry Trotz, it's really important what these guys say, but I almost feel like you already knew Marchessault was probably going to say something, like that was not necessarily endorsing Andrew Brunette.
Yeah.
Whereas I just feel like Trotz probably puts more stock in like what Stamkos says, I would guess, because of how things have gone and how he clearly feels, which shows up again here. Man, does he miss Vegas?
He loves him some Vegas. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I thought that was a really interesting couple of minutes there from Jonathan Marchessault on that front. He was asked, I think, specifically about like Brunette earlier in the press conference. And one thing he talked about, like, he didn't really get into the X's and O's of it, but he was just like, sometimes I felt bad for him out there just because nothing we tried this year worked. So like, he didn't really get too deep into it there. So then I just asked him later on, like, what about style of play? And that's when he just kind of went off on that front there. It was funny because he started that whole clip with, I'm a guy who's got a lot of opinions, and I don't think I'm going to run them all out right here.
I'm going to hold my opinions back.
And then,
here's some opinions.
Here's some opinions on what we need to do. So I thought that was pretty interesting from Marchessault. Clearly, I walked away from that discussion thinking that, like, Marchessault, I think if he's saying that stuff to us in the media, I always try to factor, like, what's he saying to Barry Trotz? Like, what is he, if he's comfortable saying that in the media? And like, one thing I'll say about Jonathan Marchessault, I said last week before the season ended, he's rubbed some people the wrong way in the Predators organization. And I stand by that. Like, that's absolutely true. One thing I appreciate about him is The dude's a straight shooter. Like whatever he is thinking, he pretty much says, which in our world, Joe, definitely appreciate.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. He's kind of like, I mean, it's kind of like the new Duchesne, right? In a way. First of all, because I think Duchesne would also not, I mean, he would say some things that people are like, whoa, did he really just say that? Eyebrow raise. And also Duchesne, people in the organization, were bothered by him. Again, maybe different ways here, but it's kind of the same feeling a little bit, and so, wherever Marchessault goes next, everybody will be like, oh gosh, come back. But yeah, but man, no question that to me, that's the center of like the conflict,
Yeah.
is him and sort of, and yeah, look, is he speaking for a lot of people, or is it like he's kind of on an island a little bit in terms of how he feels?
Well, it's interesting. I asked Steven Stamkos the same question that I asked Jonathan Marchessault, and he gave that response. I thought Stamkos gave a pretty interesting response that was very different from Marchessault. We'll get into that coming up next. Take your thoughts on the Predators. We're off and running. 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on the Nashville Predators. Big week. What does the future look like for Andrew Brunette? Still no clarity on that front. We'll get to some comments from Brunette himself coming up here in just a few minutes. But we just played some comments from Jonathan Marchessault that were very interesting on Friday, that went in to talk a lot about coaches that make adjustments, and one coach that he loves that made adjustments that he no longer plays for, which was Bruce Cassidy with the Vegas Golden Knights. Those comments made the rounds over the weekend. So, that question, that answer came from me asking him, like, style of play, what has to change here? So he went off on basically a 2-minute answer there. I asked Steven Stamkos the same thing on Friday. I thought he gave almost an equally interesting response, but in a pretty different way than Marchessault did. Here's what Steven Stamkos had to say on Friday.
Steven, talking to Marchessault about the style of play, he said, clearly it didn't work, so you're going to have to make some adjustments there. Do you have thoughts on what you think needs to change from a style of play standpoint?
Yeah, it's tough. When you lose and when you're not having success, everything sucks, right? You find things to complain about. You find things to be negative about. It's any aspect of life, right? Things are going well, the food might have not been great last night, but I had a great time at dinner because today was a great day. When things aren't going well, everything sucks. You find ways to complain about things. That's human nature, and that's what crept into a lot of us this year, was those negative thoughts. So when you're talking about systems, was it new for a lot of us? Absolutely. Is there things that can be tweaked, I think, to help out the group that we have now? That's the challenge. Is every year there's different players on teams that you have to try to figure out what works. You have to see what works, what doesn't work, and then kind of evolve around that. So that takes some time, that takes some thought. So I think, is there one thing that's glaring that needs to be changed? I'm not sure if there is, but there certainly can be tweaks, and that's why you have those relationships with the leadership group and the coaches, and you try to feel out that process. And but sometimes you need to see it before, whether it works, whether it doesn't work. And this year obviously was a tough year, so I'm sure things will be talked about behind the scenes.
So that was Stamkos on Friday, handling it pretty differently than Marchessault did, just in terms of, basically he opened up with, when things don't work, it's pretty easy to complain about everything. And he talked about, Stamkos was awesome Friday. He talked for probably close to 25 minutes and was really, really good just about how, like, the mental battle that he carried all year. And he talked about how, like, trying to move on from Tampa Bay took way longer than he thought it was going to heading into it. Like, he was awesome on Friday. And he talked about how, like, he did not handle things well mentally this year, just in terms of his approach and how negative he was at times, and learning from that. So he kind of started on that front there with that answer. Sifting through both of these answers, Joe, with Marchessault and Stamkos, they both said it in their, I think, very different ways. But one thing that I walked away from there was, I think both of them clearly feel like they did not do a good enough job of adjusting or tweaking the way that they play to the players that they have. And you heard Stamkos kind of lay it out there. He didn't go all the way down the road of it, but he was like, what best fits what we do now? What best fits the players that we have now on this roster, not just being married completely to the system and the way of doing things there. I thought it was a different response, but an interesting one from Stamkos. And when you sift through it, I think they clearly both feel like they've got to do a better job of making adjustments in this system if Brunette's going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think that obviously that was a much more diplomatic response, but also, I mean, a good perspective, and again, that's like, to me, that's the guy, if I'm Trotz, along with obviously the veterans who have been here for 2 years with Brunette, but I highly value what Stamkos tells me, face to face if I'm Trotz.
Yep.
He's got a great perspective. Obviously, he's been a great player, great guy in the league and all that stuff. And then you're right, there is still that, it's like system, system is fine, but the undertone is sort of like, are you adjusting? Are you doing what you should do with the players you have?
Right. So the bottom line, when you sift through all that, is what does it mean for Andrew Burnett, right? Like, I mean, that's here in the coming days, we're going to get an answer one way or the other, I think, as to what that means for Andrew Burnett. So we talked to Burnett on Friday, and like I said, he was up there for about 30 minutes, kind of answering questions on a bunch of different things. I thought it was a different tactic and approach that he took on Friday that I had not seen a ton from him. But pretty early into the press conference, I just asked him about his job status and his thoughts on where things kind of stand on that front. Here's what Andrew Burnett had to say on that front on Friday.
Yeah, I'm here to coach. Love my job, love my team until I'm told otherwise. I'm going to continue to work and become a better coach. And I think I'm an extremely competitive person. Sometimes it doesn't always come out that way, but and I think our group is an extremely competitive group. And we're not where we want to be. It was not from a lack of care or work. It just didn't happen. And myself and my staff, we're going to go back to work. And I think we're going to take a breath. We're going to analyze, find out what we can do better, where we can do better, what went wrong. Don't have all the answers right now. I think for me, just clear my head a little bit, but I'm looking forward to finding solutions. Like I said, I played a long time, and my path wasn't the easiest path. And what I loved about the game probably the most was finding ways. And this is a great challenge, and I can't wait to start. And if I'm told otherwise, I feel very confident in my ability to continue that path.
So that was Burnett on Friday. And I would describe it this way, Joe. Like, he kind of went into sales pitch mode, I think is basically what it was throughout the press conference. Like, I think he clearly wanted to come in there and show that he has some energy to try to figure this out. Now, I don't know what that means. He said that one line several times of, I don't really have the answers right now, but I'm going to figure them out over the summer. I need to clear my head a little bit, and then I'm going to do a deep dive as to figuring out what needs to change there. Your thoughts on what Andrew Burnett had to say?
Yeah, it's interesting. And like you said, just the idea of overall sort of, selling it. But right there, he basically was like, well, I'll coach here or I'll be a successful coach somewhere else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, good for him. It's an interesting idea. Like, how much, I don't know, you tell me how much deep dive film after going through 82 games with this team and doing all the tweaks that you did and all that stuff, all the conversations, how much is like deep diving on the film going to help you in the summer?
I don't know what the answer to that is. I would imagine you've done some of that already, right? Like, as you're trying to come up with solutions throughout the year. Now, look, I do think, when you're in the thick of it, it's not like in game 61 that you can just overhaul everything and totally change it. Like,
right.
At that point, you're just kind of in it, and you just don't have the practice time to do all that. So maybe you can really, really tweak things in one off season. But I kind of view it this way. Like, he talked with us on our show a couple weeks ago about like the starts of the season, right? And how bad they've been. And he basically is like, we're going to have to adjust what we do in training camp. Like, I think they're already thinking about those type of things. I don't know how much X's and O's wise he's gonna totally overhaul that way. Like, look, here's the way I view that part of it. If you feel like he's a good coach and you need a couple of tweaks here and there, if you're Barry Trotz, then I think you can retain him. But if you feel like it's necessary for him to just totally overhaul everything he does, then you probably just need to fire him and go hire another coach.
Just get another coach. Yeah. Yeah. It's really a really interesting situation in terms of what he would adjust. Also, by the way, the team won't be exactly the same, so there could be a huge personnel change that changes how you view things. But clearly, like, if he comes back, yes, the start of the season is important because 2 straight times now it's been bad, but also like especially urgent, I would say, for him this year.
Yeah, like, you
have to start well. But yeah, I'm with you. It's kind of like, I mean, I think their system and all that stuff, it really is like, how much confidence do these guys have in him?
That's a big part of this. I think it's a huge question and a huge part of this. Let's head back to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Bob in Antioch. Bob, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, guys. I'd like to know how both of you feel about Marchessault making his opinion about Brunette's shortcomings public. I have no problem with him, doing that, obviously to Trotz and internally, but don't you feel that him saying that publicly just creates a totally additional level of tension and possibly division in the locker room? I'd like to know how y'all feel about his comments.
Yep, thanks for the call, Bob. Here's another interesting part on that front. Like, Stamkos began his answer about talking about how easy it is to complain and how easy it is to, be negative a lot.
And Marchessault said, "Let me show you."
And because part of what I brought up was like the way I asked the question to Stamkos was like, well, Marchessault says that things clearly need to change around here, and he's like, well, it's pretty easy to be negative. So I do
Especially
wonder,
Marchessault.
like, is there some? This is just totally me spitballing here, but are there some guys in that room that look at Marchessault a little bit and be like, all right, man, come on, like let's pick it up a little bit here.
I think that's important context.
Yeah.
That answer he gave was your question was referenced Marchessault because that definitely was like, some people bitch a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
not naming any names, but you just named the person.
Yeah. So I do think that is an important thing maybe to keep in mind there. Look, this is not surprising for Marchessault in terms of saying that publicly. Like, Marchessault has always been a guy that, I said it when they first signed him. He's fiery, and he will say some things from time to time. You got to know how to handle that. And frankly, like, I don't always think that's a bad thing. Like, I think sometimes you need guys like that are pretty direct and are not afraid to stir it a little bit. I don't think you need 20 guys like that, but I think sometimes you need a guy or two like that in the room. So I'm not as concerned about the making it public part. I think if you're a good team, a good organization, you can kind of handle that when that happens.
And so much of it is, to me, if those conversations are direct and they're having them and it's all out in the open, then that's fine. I mean, some people may not like you taking it to the media, but I don't think that's a big deal. If it's taking it to the media and that's your only way you're dealing with it,
right,
that to me is the issue.
Exactly. 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. A couple more thoughts to get to on the Predators front. Some very interesting comments over the weekend at their end-of-season press conference. And, again, we're going to hear from Barry Trotz at some point this week, and we'll see what the future looks like for Andrew Brunette. More coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode, sponsored by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Taking your thoughts on the Predators, 615-737-1025. What's next for the Predators and Andrew Brunette? Hopefully we'll find out at some point this week. Barry Trotz is scheduled to speak later this week. Now, Joe, there's a chance that he could roll out there on whenever it is, Wednesday, Thursday, whenever they talk, and say, you know what? I'm still in the process of evaluating, and I have not yet come to a decision on the Andrew Brunette front. I don't think that would be a great idea. I don't think that would be something that the fan base responds overly positively to, but he could do that. I hope that whatever the decision is, whether he's coming back or whether he's not, that Barry Trotz has made that by whenever he speaks this week. By the way, there are some coaches that are now being fired around the league. Anaheim's coach got fired. Peter Laviolette got fired. So it's happening around the league.
So Lavi's available.
Lavi is
just
available.
saying. Yeah, that's not happening. Yeah, if if there's not a release that comes out right before he, comes out there, which is sometimes how teams do it, or if he doesn't immediately just say whichever way. I mean, the release would only be if they fire him,
right?
Or he doesn't come right out and say, I think that you guys should all just walk out. Just walk out.
You let us know when you made a decision, Barry. We'll see you.
Great to see you, Barry. We'll listen for you on Stilly, and let's let us know, man. We'll be ready. Give us an ample amount of time. We'll show up again when you have something to tell us. He's not gonna have a presser and not have an outcome, right?
I mean, I don't think so, but I would not totally put it past him. But I don't think so. Here's where I come down on this. Just I have my own thoughts about what they should do. Like if I was them, I really like Andrew Brunette. I'd probably move on because I think you need to shake this up a little bit. That's probably what I would do. But I walked in the building on Friday and in my gut believed that he's probably coming back. Like that was the way I walked into the building on Friday. I will say, like, after talking with Marchessault and Stamkos and listening to Andrew Brunette talk in his press conference, I kind of switched a little bit. Like I think he might get fired. Like I do know this. Like I think there are some Predators fans out there that believe it's a foregone conclusion that Brunette's coming back and that him and Barry Trotz have already talked about this and Barry Trotz has already made that decision that he's coming back. That is not the vibe I got from Andrew Brunette on Friday. I think he very much knows that his future is at the moment up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, look, for sure, based on like just the quote we played, the soundbite we played from Brunette last segment. That's not a guy who knows for sure he's coming back. No. I mean, look, say whatever you want about Barry Trotz. I don't think Barry Trotz lies. I mean, I guess every GM at some time has to at least like withhold something or, be careful about this or that. But Barry Trotz, he's been adamant that he has not made the decision. And we should believe him. We should believe him. I absolutely believe that he's trying to go through the process as thoroughly as possible. It's a huge decision. You don't make it lightly. And yeah, the idea that they're just playing coy games publicly and it's behind closed doors, they know what's going on. That's just not the case.
Oh, here's another thing. Like I think there are also there's been some conversations about like, are they about to go into rebuild? Like Barry Trotz has said some interesting things about like the plan always being the plan and you're waiting on the younger guys and all those things. And I could tell like Stamkos and the veterans want no part of that. And Stamkos said that.
They're going to be here.
Yeah, he said that on Friday. He was like, one thing he said was like, we have talked with Barry. And he has laid out what his plan is going to be in free agency, what his plan is on the trade market. That is a direct quote from Steven Stamkos. So whatever Barry Trotz has said to them, I think has been satisfactory in terms of what he's going to try to do this offseason. And those two things don't add up. Like this idea that they're just going to try to turn this thing around and go younger and be okay with being bad next year. Like the veterans are not going to go for that. And Barry Trotz has conveyed a different message than that to them. I can tell you that.
You can't be bad next year. You cannot. You can't do what he did last offseason and be bad in any of the next 3 years. You have now been bad in 1 year. That does not mean that you can be bad next year. You can't change the roster enough anyway to like really go young. And you're just going to have these massive, you can't buy everybody out. You can't move everybody or anybody probably. of these core guys that have all the money devoted to them.
Yeah,
Like,
well-
you just can't do it. You
We'll
have
s-
to try to win.
We'll see what happens on the draft pick front, because that's obviously a big part of this.
Sure.
Of like, if they land the number 1 overall pick and they're drafting Misa, like, he's probably gonna be here next year. So
And
like,
then you
there's-
could see how they might be able to take these guys and be good.
yeah, like
You
and then clearly, like Barry Trotz, I don't know exactly like the player it's going to be, but clearly he's going to go try to swing a trade this offseason. Like they've,
You think he told him who?
I don't know. Like Stamkos brought up the trade, Mario, but like it's not a new thing. They've got a couple of first round picks beyond their own that they're going to try to use. Like I think you need to go try to make a splash and do that. So I'm interested to see what the offseason plan looks like. But Stamkos said, he's like, Barry Trotz has laid it out to what it is. Like John Glennon asked him about like later in the press conference, what if they decide to go rebuild? And Stamkos is like, well, look, that's a hypothetical. I'm not going to get too much into that, but he's like, that would probably mean that we have totally failed in terms of making the organization comfortable going that route. And that would not be on par with what we were told when we got here, is basically what he said.
Yeah. So, what do you think about Andrew Burnett?
How about Trey Avery?
Trey
Trey Avery. What did you think of Trey Avery?
Do you think
Johnny put it, but another turn the punch bowl from Glennon.
Yeah.
Messing up a nice media availability. My goodness, Johnny.
One other news item there. Roman Yossi did not outright say concussion, but he said, like, basically, you guys know what this is. He's like, it is what it is. And he also said, like, I think there's been the thought out there that he's probably been healthy and able to play, but they're out of the playoff race, so they didn't mess with it. And he was basically like, no, like, I'm not able to play right now. He said,
It's not good.
He said, if I was able to play, I don't care that we're out of the playoff race. I would have played, is what he said.
So you know what it is, and I wasn't able to play it, and that means it's a long lingering.
He's been dealing with
had
it for a couple
several
months.
of these.
Yeah, and he was asked about, like, is he concerned about it long term? And he said no. He said that he has gotten some information that makes him feel good about where he is. I don't know specifically what that is, but I'm glad that he's not concerned about it, all that stuff. But this is not his. It's not his first one. It's not his second one. And if you go back to his entire career, it's probably not his fourth or fifth one either. Like, he's dealt with a lot of these, and it's clearly this one's affecting him pretty badly.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, yeah, I don't expect him to say, yes, this could all be over soon or anything like that.
Right.
But you have to be concerned.
He did say that he would be ready for camp. So he said he'll be ready, and he'll be ready to play by the time camp rolls around, but still dealing with some of the aftermath of the concussion. Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line. Welcome in Steve in Franklin. Steve, good morning. Thank you for calling in.
Good morning. Hey, as far as the Predators go, I wonder if it's time, and I've been a Predators fan from the get-go, but if it's time maybe to part ways with UC Saros. He just doesn't seem like, to me, I know they signed him to a new contract last offseason, but he doesn't seem the same as he was in the past. He seems slower. His reaction time it doesn't seem the same. I know all those shutouts, they were shut out the most in the league, I believe. I know that's not on him, but I just don't think they're going to be able to go where they want to go with any goaltender. See what y'all think.
Thank you, Steve. I don't disagree with you, but I mean, that ship has sailed at this point. They've given him the deal, and I've heard Predators fans say, "Well, you could trade him before the deal kicks in." Good luck with that. Like
the other team knows the deal's kicking in.
I know the guys. The numbers have been going down the last couple of years, and he's about to start an 8-year contract at the age of 30. But here, take this deal.
Barry Trout's like, hey, look at what he's making right now. Just look at what he's making right now. You don't want to trade for this goalie?
Never mind what he's making here in a few weeks.
Look at his current contract. Yeah, they're not moving on from him. They
made that decision.
The future of this franchise, for all the stuff we're talking about, Brunette and all these players, who they might trade, who they might draft, man, it's as much tied to hope with UC Saros as anything.
Well, and Barry Trotz has made it clear that he's a big believer on goaltending play is a direct reflection of what's happening in front of you, which then, of course, makes you say, okay, well, if that's the case, then why are you paying the goaltender all this much money? But he believes that that's the case, and they're clearly relying on him and bouncing back in a big way next year. That's got to be part of this. We'll see if he can do it.
There's nothing more dishonest than hockey people talking about their goalie.
Yeah.
Like it's just a total bunch of BS from all hockey people about their own goalie.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get into the Tennessee Vols coming up next. Their former quarterback has officially found a landing spot. They're still floating in the wilderness with the quarterback on their own front. Plus, Rick Barnes says, hey, man, forget about football for a minute. Let's put the attention on the basketball program with a big recruit. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. This week's Nashville's Best Deal is Fog Street Lawn Club, Nashville's premier soccer pub and rooftop. Fog Street Lawn Club offers scrumptious bites, British lawn bowling, and premier soccer pub vibes. Get half off a $30 gift card now at theGameNashville.com/deals and dive into the ultimate rooftop experience. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode taking your thoughts at 615-737-1025. Joe, Nico Iamaleava has officially found his spot. He is the He is signed with UCLA, so he has found his next landing spot there. Nothing yet for Tennessee on the quarterback front. So they are still, I guess, out there looking and in the weeds on the quarterback front and have not been able to find one to this point. So there's still some time here, but what do you make of where things currently stand with Tennessee on the quarterback front, and what does the fact that they have not found one yet signal to you about where this could end up?
Yeah, well, we talked about Steve Angeli, if I'm saying his name correctly, the Notre Dame quarterback the other day. And again, like you think about him, you think about they went and got Sam Hartman so that he wouldn't play. They went and got Riley Leonard so he wouldn't play. And then the young kid now beats him out. I just think that, that's it may end up being a better option than
Merk Slinger?
Than Merk Slinger, but it wouldn't be exciting. My question I have now is this Joey Aguilar. God, do I have to butcher everybody's name? Seriously. Joey A. App State transfer who went to UCLA. UCLA paid Aguilar. Yeah. God. So he goes to UCLA from App State, and they pay him. I'm sure UCLA paid him pretty well to be their starting quarterback next year. And so now Nico comes in, and I know there were some reports over the weekend that they finally, told the QB room what's going on. So does he now get into the portal? And would that be the best option? Just basically a QB swap.
Yeah.
I know he had a good year. I mean, I'm personally, it's just like what Belichick just did with his QB. I like you get enamored sometimes with like the backup at the Power 4 school, bigger recruit and all that stuff. I'm more on the side of like, have you produced, even if it's at a lower level, have you demonstrated that you can play?
Yeah.
So, I don't know how his skill set would necessarily fit into this offense, but that might end up being the best possibility for the Vols is to get him, and then he gets into all the like how much was he paid? Does he got any cash yet? All this stuff. I mean, it's a tough situation for him, but maybe he ends up making more out of this whole thing and getting in a better situation after all is said and done by just taking Nico's spot.
On other news for Tennessee, not a great weekend for the baseball team, but it was overshadowed late yesterday by the top recruit in the history of the Tennessee basketball program, Nate Ament, committing to Tennessee, and Rick Barnes, who projects to be probably a one-and-done player at the college level before he goes to the NBA. He's a top 5 recruit in this class, and like I said, the highest-rated recruit in the history of the Tennessee basketball program there. So that's a huge get, obviously, for Rick Barnes. What did you make of that decision by Nate Ament and what this now does for Tennessee in the basketball program?
Yeah, it's big time. It's a big-time recruit for Rick Barnes. Now, I don't know who was ranking recruits like in 1975 when Bernard King came in.
I mean,
he probably isn't a better player coming out of high school than Bernard King, but or Ernie or Bernie.
Sure.
But huge get, and he's 6'9", but he's a wing. He is a shooter. Frankly, I've heard the comparison. You got to be real careful.
I know where you're going.
I've seen the McDonald's highlights. The guy people compare him to, again, stylistically, is Kevin Durant.
Yep.
And there is, at that length, at 6'9", and he is a shooter. He is a scorer, a shooter. So it's a huge get for Rick Barnes. It's a 7th 5-star. You go through the list of, these varying degrees of success. Obviously, Kenny Chandler was great in his 1 year. Julian Phillips, okay. Springer, Keon Johnson were both tremendous talents, especially Keon, they had the 1 year. Josiah gives you 17 years in the program, until retirement, but he was obviously wasn't like the superstar that some people thought he'd be, but he was a very good player. This kid's probably a 1 year player. I'm watching him play. He's probably a 1 year guy, and he's probably a 1st round pick next year. Although he is very skinny.
Yep.
But that would be my guess. So look, they're loading up, man, again, and you throw him in there. They actually have a really good class. there's all this. There's a de-emphasis now on what your freshmen can do, but they got a couple other guys I think are really going to help them, and they got a chance to be good. I mean, yeah, it's just you take the heart and soul out of the thing, and it's just like, okay, so now you have new people running this entire program, and you don't have the best defender in college basketball with him, but they're going to have a lot of talent on the floor next year.
Well, you bring up Kevin Durant. Here's what Ament said to ESPN yesterday, quote, Coach Barnes sees me as a one-and-done type player. He's done it before with Kevin Durant. Sees me as that kind of guy for his program. I have built a great relationship with the coaching staff, trust them a lot. They've got big goals for me. I think they'll do a great job of developing me as a player and as a young man. I trust these coaches to help me get to the next level. So he immediately threw out, hey, he did it with Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
So
I'm Kevin Durant part duh. Yeah, Vols fans do not right now look up how Rick Barnes' team did in the NCAA tournament with Kevin Durant.
There's that. Hey, don't look up how they did against Tennessee and Chris Lofton. Chris Lofton hit a nice shot over Kevin Durant here.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Big
shot.
Yeah. Yeah, look, man. I mean, it's a
lofty goal, but I hope he gets there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hey, lofty. Well, pun not intended. Nice job. But look, I'm excited. It's a big. I mean, Duke. Duke wanted this kid. That should tell you something.
Yep.
Cal was after this kid, and I know that Arkansas was heavily on him. I mean, Rick Barnes is apparently not retiring.
Apparently not.
He's out here landing huge recruits. So that's a good thing, Tennessee fans.
Yeah,
that's a good thing that Rick Barnes will be coaching your team next year.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We have made it to draft week in the National Football League. Thursday, the fortunes, or potentially, and certainly the personnel, the excitement level will change for the Tennessee Titans franchise. What is the most burning question that Titans fans have heading into this week? We'll get into some of that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. So, Joe, we've made it. It is finally NFL draft week here. And we're just a few days away from the Titans picking at number 1 overall, and we think selecting Cam Ward. So, I threw it out there like, Titans fans, what's your most burning question out there? I don't think very many answers are going to be, hey, are they going to draft Cam Ward? I think we kind of all feel like that's going to happen at this point. I guess. I mean, you could still leave the door open for a trade, but we've gone through the timeline here. It doesn't feel like that's on the horizon at any point here.
The
So we'll see
NFL
what
wants
happens.
people to believe it's possible.
They do. They do want people to believe that. But, Thursday night, I expect, Joe, the draft to begin, the Titans to select Cam Ward at number 1 overall. And then, the burning question from there is going to be, all right, well, is this a transformational, foundational pick for a franchise that is going to totally turn this thing around? Like, is Thursday night the beginning of a run here in Nashville with Cam Ward as your quarterback that we're going to talk about being among the best or the best in the history of the franchise? That's what the goal is. Like, that your goal, and they feel a long way from it right now, is to compete for championships. So we'll see if that begins to turn on Thursday when they draft Cam Ward. Heading into the draft, Joe, I ask you, as we sit here today, the Monday before the draft, the thing you're most curious to see with the Titans this week as the draft rolls around, what would that be?
Well, to me, it's 35. It's what they do there if they can bail out of there. If they want to bail out of there, if it comes down to someone they can't believe is there, it's like, no, we got to stick and pick. Or if someone actually wants to get to that spot, and can they get more picks? That to me is the key. We know what they're doing, we think, at 1. So 35 to me is huge. And again, if the evaluators are on point in terms of the overall draft, then it's a huge deal to be able to get out of there and get another pick in the top 75 and have, again, if it really is like there's very truly little difference between the middle of the first round and the middle of the third round, then, man, is it a big deal for them to try to get out of there and get an extra player. They just need so many good football players. But at the same time, Luther Burden, James Pierce, whoever you love who might be sitting there at 35 could be a difference-making player and worth going there. So that's, to me, it's that pick. And then it's also just, again, are they picking a back? Do they feel the need to get a corner now? More of a need to get a corner now? I mean, the needs they definitely are not in the spot where Borgonzi talked about before free agency, which is you don't want to, like, basically, to paraphrase, like, have any like glaring needs. They have glaring needs all over the place. So how they deal with that's going to be fascinating.
Can they find a truly game-changing player beyond Ward? That's where I'm at. And I specifically, I'm looking at edge or wide receiver. Can you find somebody, and I'm not talking a game-changing player in 3 years. I'm talking now. Like, can you find somebody that comes in and immediately makes a huge impact on your team? Like, from an edge rushing standpoint, everybody, if you're a Titans fan that's been around long enough, you're going to bring up Curse. Like, the team is not in the same spot that they were in when Javon Curse, like, they went 8-8, I think 3 years in a row before Javon Curse got here. And it was several things. Like, they moved to Nashville, McNair started to play better. A lot of things happened that allowed them to go 13-3 and get to the Super Bowl. But probably the biggest difference was Javon Curse was an absolute freak show out there, and nobody could block him. And that made their defense really ascend to that next level. Now, the team is not in the same spot as they were then. Like, you're talking about the worst team in the league. So, you're not drafting James Pierce or Landon Jackson, and they're coming in, no matter how good they are, and making you like a Super Bowl threat. Like, that's not happening. But can you find a guy either at 35 or moving back that can come in and be a player for you. I mean, look, I've been screaming about young wide receivers and somebody needed to make a difference for 3 years at this point, ever since Traylon Burks has come in and it became clear that he wasn't going to be that guy. Like, they need that guy. Does that guy exist in this draft? Like, I probably have more confidence that you can find an edge rusher that could fit that mold than I do receiver based on what's currently available to them, we think, at 35. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. But can you find, and I don't really care which one it is if I'm a Titans fan, can you find either an edge rusher or a wide receiver that could come in and immediately you say, yeah, that guy's a good player and that guy's going to help us immediately? That's what you need to walk away with one of those guys.
Yeah.
It'd be great to walk away with 2 of those guys, but you at least need one.
Yeah, I'm confident that pick 35 and later there will be an edge and a receiver, at least one of each who will be impact players in this league for somebody.
Yeah.
I'm confident in the depth at both positions. And you know how it'll be. It'll be someone who goes in the 4th will be the star of the draft.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens too. But I think there's a lot of good options.
Scatterboo.
Oh man. Take the right. You're taking the wrong cam, Titans. Take the right cam. That 1-1. Got to do final. Writer mock today. Maybe I should.
Oh, good.
Maybe I should throw that in there. Just do Cam Scatterboo.
Y'all going 7 rounds?
No. Oh my God, I hope not. Jeez, don't freak me out. I don't think so. I'm planning on typing up a little Cam Ward thing and
being done with it,
getting out of there. But maybe a Cam Scatterboo instead. But seriously, like, what if they what if they get back into the 3rd and they're like, sitting there in the 3rd and Cam Scatterboo? I'm just saying.
As we pointed out, they've taken at least a significant interest in looking at some running backs during their 30 visits. I mean, that's at least on their radar heading into this. I think it's by multiple accounts, it is maybe the deepest position in the draft. So you can view that a couple different ways. You can view that as, man, you got a chance to get, a guy that could be a really good player for you, maybe in the 3rd round. You could also view it, Joe, as like, if you want to, there could still be some really good backs available in the 5th or 6th round that, you might be able to target at that point. But I'm interested to see, at this point, with how much they've looked at it, I'll probably be surprised if they don't walk out of there with a back somewhere in the draft. And then, how do you use them? Where do they fit? What does that mean for Tajay Spears? Like, we'll get into all that after the draft. But like, they have taken a pretty significant interest in looking at at those guys here. Like,
they have, but then it's like, if they do that, man, think of the positions they won't address.
I know,
because they've got some work to do.
They do.
Offensive line still needs work.
And I guess for receiver, specifically receiver, I'm talking like, I'm not talking somebody that comes in and you walk away and say, well, yeah, that was a pretty decent rookie year. Like, they caught 49 passes for 615 yards and
you want AJ
4
Brown?
or 5 touchdowns. Like, yeah, can they find somebody that is you immediately look at and you say, man, I don't know how he got to pick 35 or pick 42 or wherever they end up picking in the 2nd round. But thank God for the Titans he did, because he's there and he's a guy that's going to be right there with Calvin Ridley. It's kind of your 1-2 for the next couple of years. Like, they need that immediately to help out their quarterback.
Totally agree. They need that, and they need a starting edge. So again, if somehow you can get out of 35 and get a later 2nd and a 3rd, I think, I'm a big believer. I am a big believer in best available, but if it's close enough that those 2 positions can be addressed effectively in the 2nd and the 3rd, you have a starting edge and you have your wide receiver 2 / you hope wide receiver 1A, 1B, then that's a heck of a draft. And they haven't had a heck of a draft in a heck of a long time.
615-737-1025, our phone number. One question that is gaining some steam on our text line that I want to get Joe's thoughts on coming up next. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. It is time for the 4th annual 615 Open Charity Golf Tournament benefiting Folds of Honor, presented by Gary Force Acura. We'll be out there along with Fox 17, Outfront Media, and Social Indoor at Hermitage Golf Course on Thursday, May 29th to make a difference while having a great time. You can join us, a few guest media members, athletes, and musicians as we raise money for Folds of Honor. Donations will go to provide life-changing scholarships to families of America's fallen or disabled military and first responders. You can sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com. Taking your thoughts on the Titans. We have made it to draft week, mercifully, here on the program, so looking forward to that. Joe, one texter says this. Sorry if you mentioned it already. Do you think it's a possibility that the Titans could trade Jeffrey Simmons to move up in the draft? Now, there's been some ideas thrown out there over the last couple of weeks about Jeffrey Simmons, and the Titans have been taking a look at some defensive tackles as well in their 30 visits here, and maybe could have their eye on addressing that position too. Like, I look at where they're at right now with DT, and I look at, Simmons and the versatility he's got. Obviously Sweat last year. Like, I feel okay about that spot right now. What do you make of the idea of potentially trading Jeffrey Simmons and what that could either fetch you or what that could help you accomplish in the draft? Coming up, Joe Rexrode.
I don't know how to break it to you, Texter, but they have the number 1 pick. They can't move up in the draft.
You can move up other spots, though.
Yes. I'm just messing with you, Texter. Yeah, it's interesting, the evaluations of DTs. It makes you go to that, right? I get it. And I think I could see some teams out there who are a little bit more in a contending window, who have the financial flexibility to take on that deal. I could see some interest if that's really where they need help. I don't expect it to happen, but he's one of the valuable veteran assets, very, very few that they have on their roster. But again, he's got a pretty big number attached to him. And frankly, I don't think that he's playing up to that number. So I don't think he has in a couple of years. So I have my doubts that it would happen, but sure. It's a possibility, and that would, I guess, track with them looking at defensive tackles. But again, like, they also, they need depth everywhere. That's probably one of their best spots right now, as is. But you also can't have too many. To me, you can't have too many good linemen on either side of the ball. So, but it is interesting. So yeah, it's a possibility. We'll see.
Yeah, well, what are you getting back for Jeffrey Simmons? That's kind of my question, because
straight up, not a ton.
Yeah, my guess is, like, if you found the right team, let's say there's a team out there that is a competitive team and they think Jeffrey Simmons could be a piece that really helps their defense push it over the top. You're probably still looking at what? Maybe a second, probably more likely a third, somewhere in that neighborhood for Jeffrey Simmons. So then I guess the question becomes, is that worth it if you're the Titans? Because if you get rid of Jeffrey Simmons, while I agree with you, like, he is not living up to the number that he's being paid. And, at the time he signed the contract, he was going to be paid like an elite defensive tackle. And I think he's a good player. I don't think he's an elite player with the way he's played the last couple of years. But if you create a hole there, then you just got to go plug that hole again. Like, what is worth it? What return would be worth you kind of opening up a hole there that you've then got to go fill at that point would be, I think, the question if you're the Titans.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if they could get better than like a third. I see somebody saying you got to get a second and a third and a fourth. I could be wrong, but
I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening. Again, he could be part of a deal, like a pick swap situation. If you can get back you can get in the third with that, that'd be great. And again, you're going young. You are obviously in a rebuild. You're drafting your franchise quarterback number 1, so you're clearly in that situation. I suspect that he probably wouldn't be all torn up to be if he was traded to like a good team, to like a contending team or a team that's at least like a playoff team. But like you said, then so now you're weak there too. So you're you can bring in you're going to draft a rookie to come in there. What is Tavondre Sweat in his second year? I don't know. You could all of a sudden, that's one of the few strengths. Wasn't as much of a strength as it needed to be last year at all, but it was still a strength on this team. And now that becomes a weakness. So it's because they are so right now just far away with the roster. I mean, if you can actually get a decent return, then I'm not totally opposed to it, but it's also like when you have so few difference-making veteran football players, are you sure you want to take another one off the roster?
Yeah, like I think it's two separate discussions. Like I would agree with those who say he is not living up to the deal. Now, I would also say with where they're at in their roster, like right now you're not paying big money to a quarterback. You're not paying big money to a wide receiver. Like you're not really paying big money to really anybody right now other than, L'Jarius Sneed who can't get out on the field. And we'll see what happens on that front. But there's not a ton of huge contracts that you're out there on the hook with right now. So, that by itself is not a reason to pay Jeffrey Simmons, but like his level of play when he's been available it's not like it's a disaster out there. He's a good player. He is not a great player, like a great elite level player right now, which, maybe that upsets him if he hears that. I don't know. But I think most, if you watch him, would agree that he's been fine. He's been a good player. He has not been this enormous difference maker that people thought he could be when he signed that contract.
Yeah, I think that he was. I think that he was that level of difference maker in 21, 22 before he got hurt, but it's been a while. And so if you're looking at this big picture long term, you're the Titans. Obviously you're going to try to win this year. You hope you make enough good moves that you could scrounge together a run at the playoffs, at least having like games that matter in November and December. But the question you ask yourself on a Simmons thing is, okay, so in 26, if things go well, and 27, if things go well, and we're good again, what is Jeff then? And if you think that it's a decline in progress right now, then, and you can get something for a diminishing asset, then it's certainly worth talking about.
Well, and it's again, wondering exactly what you can get. Because look, if you can get a second rounder, then I'd probably be a little bit more open to it. All right. Like if you get a second rounder, which again, I don't know that you can, but if you can, I'd probably be looking into that if I were the Titans. If it's anything below, like if it's a third round or fourth rounder, then I think you start to get into, all right, what's the cost benefit here? Like what's the benefit of doing this, and is it worth the cost that you're having to pay?
What if it's a third and a fourth?
That's a good question. I probably tend to lean no there, but I'd at least think about it.
They need players.
They do.
Again, there goes one though. There goes a good one.
I think some of that also comes down to all right, let's say you get a third and a fourth. How are you going to use one of those to replace him, or are there other positions that you're targeting with those third and fourth round picks at that point?
Yeah, you have to use something to replace him, I think, right?
You would think. Otherwise, you just got this hole there where it used to be.
Hey, I remember when they traded Jarrell Casey, John Robinson got out in front of it, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, you have a chance to have Casey and Simmons in the second year together. That's a dynamite combo. Well, worked out all right, and Simmons stepped into the void and was very good. Maybe
could Sweat step into that void?
Is Tavondre Sweat about to become a difference maker in year two? I mean, I think he was promising as a rookie, but he wasn't as impactful as I thought he might be.
Right. Like what does that look like in year two with him? I mean, the one thing I'll say about Sweat that we wondered about heading into it that I think he answered pretty loudly in the affirmative, which could he play significant snaps? Like, was he going to be in shape enough to play? And he was. Like, he played, he stayed healthy for the most part throughout the year. He played more snaps than I thought he would heading into the year. So I felt good about that at the end of it. Now, moving forward, you'd like to see with those snaps, could he be a little bit more impactful than he was, particularly, getting after the quarterback. He needs to get after the quarterback a little bit better than he did in year one.
If you're him, there's no way you like the idea of Jeff Simmons being traded away.
Right.
Those two should be putting teams in a bind this year. in terms of who they're doubling.
Well,
or
then-
if, you know,
Then maybe the question becomes, what's more valuable if you're the Titans, like having Simmons and Sweat together in the interior? Or if you could get a third round pick out of this, could you find another edge rusher out there that you got Sweat up the middle, an edge rusher you feel good about on either side of him? That, I mean, look, they need two of those guys. They need two edge rushers. And I don't know if you're going to be able to find two high-level edge rushers in the draft this year, but maybe if you trade him, there's somebody that could be available.
yeah, all of a sudden you're edge heavy, I guess. But I'd be very interested to know, if there is a market for this, if there actually is a possibility, and what team out there, is there a team out there? Nothing comes to mind for me that's like good, could do it. And like, he would be a big difference for them. Like the defensive interior is a specific weakness for that team.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll take more of your thoughts on Jeffrey Simmons. Would you like to see the Titans explore a trade with him? Plus, taking a quick look around the rest of the AFC South, I've got some names to throw out there of maybe something Titans fans may not like on Thursday night. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Got some tickets to give away to see Stained and Breaking Benjamin at Bridgestone Arena this Sunday. Be caller number 3, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Caller 3 will win a pair of tickets to see Stained and Breaking Benjamin at Bridgestone Arena coming up this Sunday. Taking your thoughts on the Titans, the NFL draft, 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. Chad on the text line, Joe, says the Lions are your ticket. Trade Jeffrey Simmons to the Lions.
Last year we did talk about that, right? I think at some point
we did
as one of the possibilities for the Lions. Again, the main goal is to get Hendon Hooker here and let him become a mighty team that will not yield. There we go.
Getting around there to some point.
Yeah. I don't know that
come on down, Hendon.
The Lions need an edge, really, probably more than they need a tackle.
I would agree.
They got DJ Reader in there, and they got some guys. The edge position is where they really need somebody to help the big fella, whose name is eluding me now because my brain is slowly dissolving in public. Help me out.
The big fella up the middle?
They're star edge.
Oh, Aiden Hutchinson.
Good God.
I thought you were talking about up the middle.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the big, like the kid who broke his leg.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, that dude.
He's pretty good.
Another one. Yeah, I don't think they would give a lot, and they're big. They're big on like keeping it with the draft. Again, if you're going to draft as well as they draft, that's a great plan as long as you keep doing that. So that they're not a team that is going to do a lot of trading draft assets for high-priced veterans.
So I'm looking at the draft order as currently constructed here, Joe, knowing that things can change by the time draft time rolls around. Obviously, you're picking at 1. If you're the Titans, we think we know what's going on there. Jacksonville is at 5. Indy is at 14. And Houston is at 25. Okay? So there's the rest of your division right now where things currently stand. Are there any like if you're a Titans fan looking at this, is there somebody that is realistic? And I'm not talking, Cam Ward slipping down to 5 and the Titans trading for Trevor Lawrence or anything like that. I'm talking realistic stuff. Is there anybody that could drop to 5 or later down the list at 14 that you're looking at as a Titans fan saying, man, I really don't want this player going to Indianapolis, or man, I really don't want this player going to Jacksonville at number 5. Now, I don't think this is going to happen, but I would not totally take it out of the realm of realism. It kind of feels like the Titans are going Cam Ward at 1, Travis Hunter's going at 2 to Cleveland, and then with the Giants, we'll see if they try to bite the bullet on a quarterback and go Shedeur, Jackson Dart, or whatever, or if they just take Abdul Carter and call it a day, and that's their edge rusher. Like, what if people get scared off by Carter's injury, right, with the foot and him coming off the shoulder, and he's there at 5 for Jacksonville? Like, what are you thinking about that if you're a Titans fan? Like, on one hand, you'd be like, well, there's obviously some reason for concern here if he's dropping the number 5 that teams have been worried about. But number 2, like, I think he's clearly the most talented edge rusher in the draft if he is healthy. So I thought about that. And also, like, at 14 for Indianapolis, I think there's a wide range of people that could be available there. But, like, I did think, like, what if Tyler Warren is available at 14 for Indy?
Seems about
it's like,
right.
well, some of the, we had Nick Baumgartner on a couple weeks ago, and the comparison he gave for Warren was Dallas Clark in Indy. And it's like, well, what if they got their next Dallas Clark out there? So, there's Ted McMillan that obviously could be available, and there are differing opinions on him. Like, where does Matthew Golden go? Like, does Matthew Golden go? One team I'd keep an eye on with him would be Dallas at 12. Like, they need another receiver, and I feel like he could end up going there. But we'll see. Like, I don't know if there's anybody that scares me to death that Indianapolis could take, but I do not want to see them, if I'm a Titans fan, ending up with Tyler Warren, who I think is going to be a very, very good player at the next level in the NFL.
I do too. Well, I tell you what, the Brugler's latest mock, to me, this is a guy who very good chance he's there. He probably is there, but he might not be there depending on the Vrabster, and that is Ashton Genty.
Yes.
And I tell you what, man, and actually it's funny because some people have compared him to Maurice Jones-Drew, and I can kind of see that comparison, who was a hell of a player
He was.
with the Jags. That's you give Trevor Lawrence that guy, that's something he's never had before. I don't know what that necessarily translates to in terms of his performance, but I just know that you having to tackle that guy twice a year, I'm big on. I just believe he's going to be a star in this league. So hope that Vrabel. No, although then I know then you'll have to watch Vrabel have a great player like that, but still not in your division. You'd rather see Vrabel take him, or the Jags to do something different than for him to actually land there at 5.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I've seen mocked to Jacksonville at 5 is Mason Graham, the DT out of Michigan, who's a really good player, obviously. I
Yep.
mean, you don't love to see that either.
Yeah, there's going to be a good player.
There's going to be a good player that somebody takes at 5, you think. But, like, Genty could end up being an excellent player in the NFL. Again, could Carter slip? I have my doubts that he goes past 3, but, what happens if Ward goes at 1, Hunter goes at 2, and then the Giants want to take a quarterback? Like, do Vrabel and the Patriots take Carter at 4, or do they stick with what most people think they will do, and that's go offensive lineman at that point? I don't know.
Take an OT.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. And then who would be for the Texans? I mean, it's I think speaking of Michigan, I think their tight end Colson Loveland's a really good player too. Now, again, most people think he's going to be gone by then, but I'm trying to think of somebody, in that range who might fall and be a little bit of a surprise that you'd be like, oh God, like this mock has them taking Walter Nolan.
I'll tell you another guy.
Would be Vol.
What if, who I think would probably be a number 1 type of back in any other year that didn't have Ashton Genty or like Bijan Robinson, like that Hampton kid out of North Carolina is really good. You know, what if he falls, and a lot of people think he's going first round, could Houston snatch him up at that point? Like, Houston needs some offensive line help, obviously, like jettisoned their entire offensive line in the offseason. So that's probably where they're going at 25, which again, nobody ever gets excited about the offensive line picks, but if you do it right, then that's pretty transformative foundational picks for you. But could they end up with somebody that you're just like, good gracious? Like, how did Houston end up with him?
Right. Yeah. The reality is, at least for something like this, it's like you rarely are like, oh, they got that really good guard at 25, or like, oh, Josh Connerly, man, he's a really good tackle or guard from Oregon. And that it may end up, that's probably a big difference for them, right? I mean, last year's offensive sort of regression, I know they kind of scapegoated the OC, but probably had something to do with that too. So really, it's a big deal if they can solidify the offensive line. But that's not a pick that you get upset about in the moment, So, but yeah, Hampton is a guy, they wouldn't take an edge, but like a guy like Michael Williams, really interesting. I see him all over the place. He's only 20. I think he might end up being a star in the NFL, but he's been injured, and so you don't know for sure what he is. Usually a guy coming out of Georgia is probably going to end up being pretty good.
I'll tell you the one guy in the first round. There's actually 2 guys in the first round that I'm really curious to see where they end up, and they're kind of all over the map right now in terms of like the mock draft land. Number 1 is Shamar Stewart, the edge out at A&M, because he's got all these measurables that people are over the moon about. He had like basically 0 production at Texas A&M, which would scare the crap out of me if I'm an NFL team. And of course, like, my luck, he's being mocked all over the place with the Packers right now. And I'm like, no, do not take him. But he's one guy. And then there's Tet McMillan. I heard Stilly talking about him the other day. So he ran, I think, a 4.55 40, which is not exactly what you're looking for. Now he's also 6'4", so we have to keep that in mind. He's 6'4". I've seen him going in the top 10 in some of these mock drafts. I've seen him going to the Cowboys at 12. Saw a mock draft the other day where he's at 25. So I have no idea where he's going to end up in the first round. So those 2 guys are 2 at premium positions at edge rusher and wide receiver that I'm very interested to see where they go in the first round.
Yeah, Tet is he could fall. Like, I do feel like Golden's probably the surest thing at receiver in this draft. But I also, again, I'm just a big believer. Like the whole 40 thing, man, it is so overrated. Again, you talk about, oh, this guy 4.4 and a 4.41 whatever. Now, man, Jerry Rice ran a 4.6. I mean, and I'm not saying that he's going to be great for sure, but you look at how he plays. I think he's a first round receiver, and if somebody gets him in the mid 20s, late 20s, I think that's a huge steal.
I mean, who was the kid from Washington that ran the 40? John Ross.
Oh yeah,
John Ross, 4.2, 240.
Sure, couldn't play a lick.
He couldn't.
I mean, it's great if you can do both. Like if you're someone who can play and also runs a good time, sure. But it is truly one of the and you can find so many examples of great 40 time, no production. Troubling 40 time, didn't mean a damn thing.
Stilly says that Bill Polian wouldn't take anybody at receiver that didn't run a 4.51 or higher.
Yeah. So so Bill Polian wouldn't take Jerry Rice. Great. I want to listen more to him then. And I know he's obviously has a good track record, but that's just to me that's just stupid rule. Can you play football?
Stilly loves him some Bill Polian. I've noticed that over the last couple of weeks.
I mean, how much shouldn't there be like some sort of a cap? How about a cap on Bill Polian quotes on our radio station? Cap.
Bill Polian said.
Cap. Nice.
615-737-1025.
Let's get Rick Spielman in there. Oh, my goodness.
615-737-1025, our number. Joe Rexrode's rant of the day coming up next. We'll have Corey Curtis from News 2 with us at 8 o'clock. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment, let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
Nothing like a hot cup of coffee.
Oh, Todd, I have to disagree with you, Todd. I take a look at a standard cup of hot Joe that compared to the dynamic, hard-hitting, electric cold beverage like an ice mocha frappuccino out Seattle, the Starbucks franchise. Gives you a bigger burst, cooler temperature. No need to blow on it because this one's ready to drink now.
The NFL will take Charles Manson if he can throw for 4,500 yards. Have we not figured this out yet?
He's a habitual line stepper.
Ooh, look at the unmute.
That's good.
Deft, skillful.
Maybe someday you could be like me and get gout.
I drink a lot of milk, Andrea. A lot of milk. Whole milk, though. Not the canned 2% or skim milk.
Hey, I've been saying that the whole time, but no one listens to me.
Gonna get to you.
It is that time of the day. Time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program. Joe Rexrode, the floor is yours.
Coming in with some NCOT B at the end. That's really interesting. That's sort of Ian reads minds, I think. You know, this weekend we had some company and we were talking about like the new kids on the block, you know, who liked listening to them. Like my little sister had like the new kids on the block posters all
So
over
did
her
mine.
wall.
Yeah, my
okay,
sister.
there you go.
The giant pins. They had like.
Oh, sure.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. Like you. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man. NCOT B. Why did you decide? I just like.
Oh, I don't know. I
You're
just
just feeling
random.
NCOT B today.
Yeah.
Got your house bugged.
Oh man. See, so now I this is what happens is now we have a text that makes me want to like pivot a little bit, but we'll get to this. Ed brings up a concern about getting third round picks and then lists out some bad third round picks. And my response is, yeah, I'm about to bury you, Ed, in examples of good third round picks. But I will stick with the plan here, which is so this is also from the text line earlier in the show. And I totally missed this. I can't tell if I know that there was something initially. I guess maybe there was something new this weekend from TJ Hujmanzada. By the way, I just said his name beautifully.
You did.
So I think we've, probably gone around and around enough on this, but just, I guess I have to I feel like I have to get another word in because he's a friend of the Iamaleava family. Got that right too. Nailed it.
Iamaleava.
Oh crap. I didn't nail it. Iyama. I want to emphasize the second syllable.
You do.
Iamaleava is correct. Why? I didn't have that problem before, did I?
You're really struggling the last couple
I know,
of
like
weeks.
in the early days of like his commitment, we were, bouncing it back and forth. Which is it? But anyway, Hujmanzada is a friend of the family. And so he's out there again, pushing this was not about money. This was about, so the big thing that this is about the offense. And, it's really enough. Okay. But I see some people, Adam Gorney from Rivals, he's a national writer for Rivals, kind of picked this up and wrote about it and sort of backed up one thing that TJ said, which apparently is a big deal, which is, and Gorney says, this is his own sourcing, says, the Iamaleava family did not talk to Spire Sports, which is the Tennessee collective. Last time they talked to them was January. Okay. So I guess this is some sort of proof that it's actually about the offense. To me, that's not at all that. It's just the Tennessee was out on giving them more money.
Yeah.
And so they decided to try to leverage this and they completely screwed it up. They completely botched it. And so now they're trying to spin it. And again, it's like we're almost to the point, once Tennessee gets their quarterback, whoever it is, everybody move on and we'll just see how it goes. But that means nothing. That doesn't mean anything. And like the idea that, and again, Hujmanzada also saying a lot. I saw a lot of the stuff that he said, and it's all the usual stuff. Like, well, if coaches can ask for a raise after success, why can't a player? And again, it's like that's true. Coaches get raises after good seasons all the time.
You can ask.
Yeah, exactly. You can ask, but like, look at his particular success. Did he have enough around him offensively? Did the family ask about that? I believe so. I believe that's true. I believe they asked about better protection, weaponry on the outside, and all that. The offense itself, though, again, like Heupel's not changing his offense. He had this offense before you got there. You knew what it is. You know what it is now. So I understand that it's more nuanced than just straight up money, but to try to spin this now into that, like, what's the point? You move on. I hope UCLA gave you good money. I don't think we're ever going to see a figure on that, but you cost yourself. And the thing is, if they're going to be bad, then you really cost yourself, because, if you didn't like your protection and all that now, or last year, this year right now, it looks like it's going to be a rough go after you learn this new offense.
Look, I'm not naive enough to think that, Tennessee or name your college program, like, tells the truth all the time, right? Like, there's some lying and some shady business and all that stuff that takes place in college sports. But also, like, I don't really care what TJ Houshmandzadeh or really anybody associated with Nico's family says, because they have already been shown to be liars. Like, it is documented. Like, they tried to go to Tennessee with offers that did not exist from other programs and make it sound like they were being offered more money and more, different options with programs than they actually were. So frankly, after you do that, I don't really care what TJ Houshmandzadeh or anybody associated with the family says. You can't be trusted. So I'm not trusting you with stuff you say like that.
Yeah. And he said it on, he said it on Fox Radio to LeVar Arrington on their, morning show. And again, it's just like, this reminds me, we were talking about Rick Barnes earlier. This reminds me of, again, like Rick Barnes almost took the UCLA job. So I remember I wrote a column about this in the Tennessee, and it was so infuriating. Rick Barnes almost took the UCLA job. He decided not to. Fulmer paid him. They kept all that stuff. So then there was an insider, it was like behind the scenes of what happened in the LA Times by their beat writer, but it was just like what the AD told him happened. And Rick Barnes, on and off the record, was like, that is not at all what happened. I don't know what happened, but I know that if you're going to take a biased perspective on a two-side story and just try to report that as fact, you're probably doing it wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sure, there's a lot of stuff about the situation we don't know. But like you said, they've been proven to be dishonest. And also, it's just incredibly stupid. If you had gone before all these other, Beck had gone to Miami, Mateer had gone to Oklahoma, you got Jackson Arnold, the Oklahoma King comes off. There's all these other quarterbacks. If you'd gone then, you would probably have bidders, and you might actually get yourself more money and a team that might win. I mean, you totally botched the situation. So Nick Iamaleava needs to just stop and, just worry about his kids and stop trying to play the spin game on this crap.
Well, and, I think you said it well, kind of leading into all this. I think we're now probably at the point where he's gone. He's at UCLA, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see how things go there. Like, I think from the Tennessee side of this, people have moved past the Nico part now. It's like, all right, well, we'll see, bud. And we'll see how it goes. And then now the question is, who's going to be the next quarterback at Tennessee? Is it going to be the Merck Slinger, or are they going to find somebody else?
Ryan in Florida says, I saw 900K. Yeah, I'm sure, like, there's message boards. You probably find somebody who'll say he got like 8,000 and some Bisquick coupons. I mean, I'm sure, I would think that UCLA probably paid him more than $1 million. Maybe not.
In-N-Out Burger.
Oh man, that is one huge benefit of moving back
coming
out
here.
There.
They're moving the headquarters
That's
here.
True. That's true. When do we get it? When did we get our first?
I don't know.
See, it's such a novelty to have it. I don't know if having it all the time. It's like when we moved from Michigan to here, and I was so excited about Chick-fil-A. It's like, oh, you just get Chick-fil-A whenever you want.
I'll take it.
No free ads though.
615
except for In-N-Out Burger.
26
is
the first expected to open.
All
So maybe next year.
Getting close.
Good God. I'm going to be
Nico?
fatter, even fatter.
All you had to do was wait. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. Corey Curtis from News 2 will be with us coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Monday morning. And we head to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our friend Corey Curtis from News 2, brought to you by Tennessee Men's Clinic. Corey, good morning. How are you?
I'm off to a rough start. I just pulled the coffee cup away from the Keurig, and it wasn't finished.
Oh, boy. I did that last week. Did you get any on your hand? Because I about gave myself third-degree burns last week doing that.
Nope. I just pulled the cup out, and I used the handle. I didn't decide to stick my hand in the. I didn't stick my hand in the cup.
That's good. Well, we're sorry for your rough start to a Monday morning. Luckily, it's about to get better in a hurry.
It's a Monday.
Talking to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
About to get better in a hurry here. So, Corey, we finally made it to draft week. And
is it?
I don't think that there's much suspense about what the Titans are doing at number 1 overall here. So my question for you is your biggest burning question for the Titans, the thing you're most curious about on the draft front for the Titans as we get to the draft later this week.
Do they trade their second round pick and get more picks? That's my biggest question is, are they going to go 35 to 103 or are they going to get something else in there? Or are they going to make another deal involving other picks or players currently on the roster to get back in the draft and picks between 36 and 102?
We've thrown around the Jeff Simmons things. People have asked about that. The possibility maybe there's a team out there that might be interested enough in him. If you were, first of all, do you think that that's possible in terms of another team? If you were the Titans, would you consider moving him, and what would you be looking for?
That was we were talking about it yesterday in the office. Is that a real possibility? Is there enough demand for Jeffrey Simmons? Can you get enough in return to make that trade? And then what is the return? Because we go, a second and a third, and I'm like, yeah, I think I'd run to the table and take that deal. And it's not because I don't like Jeffrey Simmons. It's because this team has to build for the future. And, Jeffrey Simmons is entering year 7 or is that we're at 7 or 8?
I think so. Yeah. I think 7.
Yeah. So, how much would I need? That's, I guess that's what I would know when it got presented to me, but I would need 2 picks. I know that. And I certainly one of them would probably have to be in the second round.
Corey, one of my biggest questions that, I've been screaming about this for 3 years of finding a young wide receiver to build around. Obviously they had one and then traded him. So,
that
whether
didn't work out so well.
Did not work out so well. So whether it's at 35 or if they trade back, they get to 42 or 40, whatever it is, like, can they find one of those guys? Like, people have brought up Luther Burden. There's a couple guys later in the second round that you may be able to find that are intriguing. But to me, that's a big part of this, that they either have to find this year or certainly next year. Like, you need that young wide receiver that is impactful immediately to go with Cam Ward. And I'm interested to see if they can find that now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I kind of expect them to double dip at that position, to go possibly at 2 and then again at 4 or 5, because I think there are going to be guys, I think there are going to be good football players on the board in round 4, especially when they're picking at 103, if they still own that pick when it gets there. I think there's going to be players on the board that you cannot believe are still there. And that's because I think there's maybe not the high end, the numbers at the high end. I think, between 25 and 100, I think there's a lot that can be interchanged there. And so as a result of that, there's going to be players on the board, depending on the eye of the beholder, that you can't believe are going to be there. And I think, in round 4, there's going to be receivers who could potentially be productive players, for the Titans. And I think they could, obviously we all know the 2 names we tossed around at 35, and, that's Burden and Buka. And if one of those guys is there, you kind of run to the podium and take your pick. But, there are other guys who can be good players. And, we talk about A.J. Brown. He was a 2nd-round pick. Antonio Brown was a 4th-round pick. There are good players taken outside of the 1st round all the time. And That's why you have a personnel staff to find them. This team hasn't done the best job in finding them the last 4 years, and that's why they're picking first.
You'd run to the podium for either of those guys as opposed to dropping back
Make a
right there.
trade.
Someone gives you a call and you get back into the third. You'd run to the podium.
It would be hard not to. I mean, if like you're saying, like if I could still pick 40 and get like 60, 40 and something like that, I'd be like that would be tough. That would be tough to step away from. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean that part of it's really interesting. The thing is, Corey, they need an impactful wide receiver, and they certainly need an impactful edge rusher. And can you get both? Like, is that possible in this draft to get both that can come in immediately and help you?
Look, you go into rounds 4 and 5. You can get a guy like Kyle Kennard from South Carolina who had 11.5 sacks last year.
Yep.
You can get a guy like Tyler Barron, who had 19 sacks in his college career. A guy from UT who went on to Miami and had like 6.5 sacks. I mean, Tyler Barron is like 6'5", 260 and ran a 6'3", 40. I mean, he's an athlete. They're not perfect products, which is why they're projected later. But Kyle Kennard has 11.5 sacks in one season in the Southeastern Conference.
I really like him.
I mean,
good player.
I don't think he's getting anywhere near enough buzz. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he didn't test well, so that's taken about. I think there's also criticisms about his strength at the point of attack, which I guess could be a set the edge question. But guys, we know this. They need somebody who can hit the quarterback, and this guy has over 20 career sacks in college. 11.5 in one season in the SEC. I mean, you got to look at guys like that, and when you can get them in round 4, you've got 2 fourth-round picks. I think you can say, you can get a good football player there who can make an impact for you and play his rookie year.
So, Corey, I did want to get your thoughts, something that we've talked about today, and we've been talking about a lot, but now it's go time. We've had we've had new, very interesting public comments, as of Friday. You think Barry Trotz is firing Andrew Burnett or keeping him?
Well, Barry's a coach. So I think, the last person he's going to want to blame is the coach because he knows how that blame game goes. But if it's not the coach, it's the players. And if it's the players, then he's blaming himself because he's the one who put the team together. So I think that's an interesting kind of thought process there. And maybe Barry is second guessing his decisions on how it all came together. We'll hear from him, this week. I'm not one who always runs to blame the coach. So if you didn't want to fire him, I would say, okay, let's talk about, where you think the mistakes, were made then, because ultimately this system, did it not score goals last year?
It did.
And then this year it magically did not score goals. And wasn't there like shooting percentage, like historically low?
It was incredibly low. Incredibly low.
Okay. So does that fall on the coach or the players for their inability to finish scoring opportunities?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like the question that I would have that I think they've got to determine here, Corey, that's going to play a big role in this. Like the shooting percentage is low. I think there's a lot about this season that will probably naturally correct itself just from, getting back to the mean next year. How much of that, how much do you rely on that? And how much do you look at it and say, all right, well, this system has been successful before, but maybe it's not successful with this makeup of players. Like that's what I think they got to figure out.
That's a good question. I think that's a good question. And I think that's a fair question. And I think it's very difficult to sell to players and fans bringing back the coach when you just finished with the third worst record in the NHL. I mean, that is a tough sell, and you're asking for a buy-in from your players when your coach asked them to buy in last year, and it didn't work. I think it's tough because with the Titans, you can point to quarterback, and say, yes, they were the worst team in the NFL last year, but with competent quarterback play, they probably win at least 6 or 7 games, and they're picking nowhere close to first. And with the Preds, we can't point like to UC Saros and say, well, if it weren't for use, they'd be, 5 points out of the playoffs instead of 30. And so that's kind of a tougher diagnosis, because you're talking about guys having career bad years and all of them doing it at the same time. I mean, you got 21 goals from Marchessault and 25 goals from Stamkos. And I don't remember what, Stamkos and Sisson's numbers were exactly a year ago, but I would say they were both considerably down. You look for a step up from Luke Evangelista and you got to step down. For all of those guys to take a step down in 1 year is alarming. It's alarming. And is it just bad luck? Because, a wise man once always told me that hope is not a strategy. And to hope guys play better next year is an awful big limb to go out on.
Well, and frankly, I think they've done that probably too much throughout the history of their franchise let's just hope that people have career years this year. And that's a tough thing to pull off.
Now you got almost a decade of hope as in regard to UC Saros coming up.
Well,
So
there is that as well. Corey, we apologize for your early morning coffee spill, but we hope that we at least took your mind off of it for the last 15 minutes. Thanks for being with us.
Well, I've rallied and I'm ready to go now. And I want to thank you guys for watching our draft preview last night.
Yep.
It was very nice of you. I know you stayed up because you were up like 3 hours later.
Sure.
I recorded it.
I want to remind everyone that everyone can watch the NFL draft on News 2 from start to finish, starting Thursday night at 7:00.
Absolutely. We're very much looking forward to it. Corey Curtis, great stuff. The next time we talk to you, the draft will be complete. So we're looking forward to that next week. Thanks for being with us.
I wonder who they'll take number 1. I'm on pins and needles.
Me too. Very, very curious. Corey Curtis, brought to you by Tennessee Men's Clinic, joins us every Monday morning at 8 o'clock here on the program. We'll react to what Corey had to say. Had a couple more of your thoughts to get into on the NFL draft. We will get back into the Predators conversation later this hour as well. Some eye-opening comments from Jonathan Marchessault, particularly over the weekend as well. We'll get into all that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Don't miss Nashville's best NFL draft coverage on the Game Nashville Sports Network, broadcasting live from Twin Peaks in Madison on Thursday and Friday from Boom Boss Pizza and Watch Bar in East Nashville. Coverage begins at 6 o'clock each day, presented by Hardee's, Parman Tractor and Equipment, Twin Peaks, Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, Shane Co., and Professional Home Improvements. We'll be on 102.5 The Game Thursday, Friday on Sports Talk 8:30. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode. Appreciate Corey Curtis from News 2 for being with us in the last segment there. So he says, if Burton and or Egbuka are available at 35 for the Titans, that he would have a tough time not just running up to the podium and saying, hey, here's our card. We're turning in the pick, and we're going with one of those two guys. I probably would too. Now, again, that becomes, okay, what's the offer to trade back? If it's moving back to the low to mid 40s and you're picking up either another early third round pick or a mid third round pick, then I'd probably have some thinking to do on that front, Joe Rexrode. But specifically those two guys at wide receiver, and Egbuka or a Burden, if they're there at 35, I'd probably have a hard time passing.
Yeah, I like them. I like them both. So I get that for sure. This is where, all the work you've done as a team is what you lean on, I mean, you may think there's not that big of a gap between those guys and the next couple of guys coming off the board at receiver, and you may think it's incredible that you have this opportunity to draft them. I mean, I still kind of lean toward get more picks again based on the overall idea that, Corey said to 100. Again, we've heard 15 to 75 is almost the same thing in this draft. I think that really means something. Ed, by the way, I can get to Ed now, says, are we all getting too concerned about getting another third or fourth round pick? Trading guys for picks below third is no guarantee. Is Tajay Spears, Malik Willis, Monty Rice, all third round picks really helping the team? First of all, there's no guarantee in the first round either, or second round, right? So I hear what you're saying, but do you like Kevin Byard? Because he was a third round pick. Do you like Jonnu Smith? Because he was a third round pick. I was looking for more recent examples. It's hard to find recent examples because almost all the picks sucked in recent years. But again,
we'll look around the league. Yeah. I mean,
the third and fourth round produce tremendous players all the time. And you can get starting level players if you draft well in those rounds.
Right. Like you need your scouting department to find guys that can come in and be impactful players for you in later rounds. Like, obviously, the most important thing here is you hit on your first pick. Like, everybody knows that. If you hit on Cam Ward, then that's going to be the story of this draft, whether or not he's a success or a failure. So we know that heading into it. But, go back to 2019. They had Jeffrey Simmons, but they also had A.J. Brown.
Well, Nate Davis was that third round,
Nate Davis,
by the way.
And he was good. He wasn't great, but he was good.
But you'll take a starter, a multi-year starter at guard who you didn't want to pay, but was good enough to get paid by somebody else.
Right. Like, Amani Hooker was in that group. So
fourth rounder.
Yeah. So they've done it before. Like, they've found later round players that have come in and have been successful. You need to, it's high time they have another good draft. Like, they've not really even had a good draft since 2019.
Right.
They've had some okay picks here or there, but they've not really had a good draft since 2019, which was a great draft. So it's a long gap.
It's a long gap. And by the way, in that 2019, they also got David Long in the 6th round.
Yeah.
So now again, that's an extreme example of that draft, and also once you get again later rounds, now I'm more skeptical of the later rounds.
Yeah.
But I think through the 4th and you hope the 5th, you can still, even in the 21 draft, bad draft, because obviously you take Caleb Farley 1, you take Dylan Radins 2, and then you take Monty Rice in the 3rd round. It's like, oh boy, but you also got Elijah Molden in the 3rd round that year. And Elijah Molden was banged up, but that's not a bad pick. And by the way, the Chargers are happy that he's in the league.
Yeah.
He was good last year. Then you took Dez Fitzpatrick in the 4th round. You could have taken Amon-Ra St. Brown and others. That was a disaster. But Rashad Weaver's not a terrible pick either in the 4th round there. So,
but if you're picking at 35, like if you stick and pick at 35, if you're the Titans, you better be right, because that's a long time from pick 35 to 103 to just sit there with the needs that you've got on your roster. So like I would probably like to see them trade back and pick up more picks. However, if you feel like you've got a great player there at 35, I'm cool with them staying there, but you better get it right. Like you better be, if you're sticking and picking at 35, you better be pretty darn sure that guy's going to be an absolute stud player for you moving forward here.
Yeah. It's almost like, no doubt, they need to have
You just don't have the luxury to not be right about that with the rest of your roster the way it is right now.
I mean, I guess you could look at this draft and say, well, even if you're wrong on everything else, if you are right on Cam Ward, then eventually it'll pay off for you, right? But yeah, Cam Ward, let's say Cam Ward is ready to have like a Jaden Daniel, CJ Stroud kind of rookie year, which I doubt, but I'm just saying if he is, like, those guys did have some good players around them.
Yep.
Like, how would you even have that with this roster?
Yeah, I mean, right now, go look at they don't.
That would be a magician trick.
Yeah. Like right now, their receiving room is Calvin Ridley and a bunch of dudes. Like that's what it is.
Traylon Burks.
No disrespect to Bryce Oliver, but I mean, we spent entirely too much time this offseason talking about Bryce Oliver. That's where they're at in their receiving room right now.
Yeah. Someone also texted, we talk about, tanking for quarterbacks. It's like, can the Titans tank for the next 2 years so that they can get Ryan Williams or Jeremiah Smith?
Yeah.
Those might be like the number 1 and number 2 picks in the 27 draft.
Yeah.
Is Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams.
I was talking with an Ohio State fan on Twitter probably last week, and I do wonder, like, if Jeremiah Smith was coming out in this year's draft, where would he go? I think it would be top 5. Like, I think it'd be a top 5 pick.
Oh, I have no doubt at all.
Yeah.
I think either of those guys would be.
You're talking about a 19-year-old.
Oh, it's insane. Get diarrhea for Jeremiah? No, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Give me something for Jeremiah.
By the way, since Nico's gone now, are we retiring Walk Through Lava for Iamaliava, or does that live on?
Well, I mean, if he plays well at some point, then if he's going to be a high, drafted QB, Cam Ward flames out after year 1. Everybody, no, this didn't work. You might still need to walk through lava for Iamaliava. Dang it. Why do I have regressed?
You have. But I'm sure that how many drummed up stories do we think we're going to get from now until the first round of the draft about Titans have not totally closed the door on a trade between now and Thursday? I'm looking forward to those.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting. I'm going to be mad at whichever reporters come with that. you need,
There's still time.
Yeah, again, like technically, I mean, if I'm the Titans, I'd be like, well, look, technically, someone could offer the world to us, but it just hasn't happened. So until we make the pick, we haven't made the pick, right? But yeah, we don't need. We don't need a lot of that.
I think we're a little late in the game at this point. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get back into the Titans throughout the week. Obviously, we've arrived to NFL Draft Week, thankfully. So that's coming up on Thursday. By the way, looking forward to having Charles Robinson on the day of the draft coming up on Thursday as well at 8 o'clock. So make sure you're tuned in for that. Always some good stuff on draft day with Charles every year. And we were very fortunate to have him on the day of the draft this week as well. We'll get into the Predators coming up next. Some eye-opening comments from Jonathan Marchessault over the weekend. We'll revisit those. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Over the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Big week on the NFL draft front this week, and also a big week for the Nashville Predators. The future up in the air at the moment for Predators head coach Andrew Brunette. We're going to get to some of his comments a little bit later here in the program. But let's start with the Predators' end-of-season press conferences on Friday. The players spoke first, then Andrew Brunette spoke. We are scheduled to hear from Barry Trotz at some point this week, so we'll see exactly when that happens. But Jonathan Marchessault making some waves over the weekend with one of the questions I had for him. I basically asked him, hey, like the style of play, what do you think about it, and do you think it needs to change with this group as they move forward here? And here is what Jonathan Marchessault had to say on Friday.
Is there anything specifically with the way you guys play, the style of play, that you would like to see adjusted heading into next year?
Yeah, clearly it didn't work. Right. So obviously there's going to be some adjustment to do. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a guy that has a lot of opinions, so I don't think I'm going to run them out right now. But yeah, there's definitely adjustment. I think one of the things that we adjusted this year that I think was good is in our D zone, sometimes we had our winger a lot on the boards, and now they were more towards the middle. So we kept a lot of things towards the outside, and I think our D zone got better with that. That's one of the things that we did better this year, I think, from the beginning to the middle. So, yeah, I mean, obviously there's adjustment that needs to be done. And to be honest, my mindset is every team in the NHL should take a page of the books of the best teams in the NHL. I think they're the reason why they're there. Yes, they have sometimes they go up. They're at the cap. I think that's something that's super important to be competitive. But yeah, I think some of the teams that are the best, they do something really good to be there, and I think everybody needs to take a little bit of page of the good teams in the league. That's why that's why playoff hockey is the best hockey, because that's why you look at the teams, you like see how they play their game, their system, how they adjust certain situation, like, because I've had a lot of different coaches, and probably one of the best coaches I ever had was Bruce. And one thing, like me and him, we definitely headbutt each other, but he adjusts. He adjusts every game, and he's an unbelievable hockey mind. And there's a reason why they're so good. Obviously, they have the tools over there, but he's a guy that thinks the game super well, and that's something that I really enjoyed from him.
So Marchessault says, clearly what we didn't work, and I've got a lot of opinions that I'm not going to throw out there right now. And then he threw out some opinions about what they're missing at the moment. It was interesting. Like, there's a lot to sift through there. He's talking about how, if you're a team in the league and you're not in the playoffs, you need to start following the book of like what other teams do. What sort of systems do they run? What sort of way are they trying to play out there? He talked about how spinning the cap is a really important thing, which, I mean, the Predators spent a lot of money last offseason, so we'll see what they do this offseason. He talked about how, Bruce Cassidy came up just basically out of nowhere. Like, he brought up his old coach in Vegas, and the one thing he kept saying was, yeah, we butted heads. We didn't always get along, but man, that guy adjusted. He adjusted on a nightly basis. And he didn't come out and say like some waving sign that Andrew Brunette's not a good coach, but I would not exactly call that a ringing endorsement of Andrew Brunette that Jonathan Marchessault gave there.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're Andrew Brunette and you're hearing that, I mean, how could you not take that at least as a little bit of a subtweet, comparing the previous coach to him, and talking about because the adjustment has obviously been so much of the conversation all year. So, like I said earlier, if Marchessault, it's clear that Marchessault is sort of the center of the conflict here, right? He didn't have a good year. He was outspoken at times about it. It seems that there's some people who aren't big fans of his or aren't big fans of some things he's done / said.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to know is, like if Marchessault and Brunette had it out to the point of like they they've said their piece. He said his piece to him directly and frankly, or is he saving it for things like this?
Right.
That's a big deal. And of course, I'd love to know what Marchessault told or will tell. I mean, the player interviews got to be done.
I think
right?
they've met. So
told Barry Trotz about him too.
Yeah, is there anything the players could have said to Trotz at this point to sway his mind?
I think that may be a large part of what this comes down to. Like I think, I said it heading into this, and I heard Elliot Friedman talking about this too. Like I think the exit meetings and what those players said and discussed with Barry Trotz is going to go a long way in this. Like I don't know how it couldn't, just based on the way your team's structured right now. Like, could you move on from Marchessault after 1 year? Maybe. Like there may be somebody out there that could trade, but like Stamkos is 35 years old, had a down year. First off, he got trade protection. I don't think he wants to go anywhere right now. So like he's going to be back, and Shea's going to be back, and Yossi's going to be like, all these guys are going to be back. So you got to find a way to figure it out if you're them. So I think that's a large part of what it could come down to. Now we heard from Marchessault there, and he answered it. And it's like, look, the one thing I say for Marchessault, I brought it up last week. I don't think that, he's always the most popular guy all the time with some people in the organization. The one thing I'll say, like, he's pretty direct. Like he says what's on his mind, which I kind of like. I think you need some of that in your organization. So I like that part of it. Now, I asked Steven Stamkos the same thing, same question about adjustments and style of play and all that. And here's what Steven Stamkos had to say on Friday. A pretty different answer.
Steven, talking to Marchessault about the style of play, he said, clearly it didn't work, so you're going to have to make some adjustments there. Do you have thoughts on what you think needs to change from a style of play standpoint?
Yeah, it's tough. When you lose and when you're not having success, everything sucks, right? You find life, right? Things are going well, yeah, the food might have not been great last night, but I had a great time at dinner because today was a great day. When things aren't going well, everything sucks. You find ways to complain about things. That's human nature, and that's what crept into a lot of us this year was those negative thoughts. So when you're talking about systems, was it new for a lot of us? Absolutely. Is there things that can be tweaked, I think, to help out the group that we have now? That's the challenge. Is every year there's different players on teams that you have to try to figure out what works. You have to see what works, what doesn't work, and then kind of evolve around that. So that takes some time, that takes some thought. So I think, is there one thing that's glaring that needs to be changed? I'm not sure if there is, but there certainly can be tweaks, and that's why you have those relationships with the leadership group and the coaches, and you try to feel out that process. And but sometimes you need to see it before, whether it works, whether it doesn't work. And this year obviously was a tough year, so I'm sure things will be talked about behind the scenes.
So a couple of different answers there from Stamkos and Marchessault. Now, one thing that reading between the lines, I think you could take away from both of them is I don't think they always felt like the adjustments were there for their group. Like one thing Stamkos said in the middle of that there was, taking a look at the group we have now. And I thought that kind of stood out of the group we have now. Is this exactly the right fit, the way we're doing things? Or could you make some adjustments on that front? But two pretty different answers there from Stamkos and Marchessault.
Yeah, and it kind of matches up with, I think kind of really how it's gone this year for them both and how they've decided to address things. I don't know if it necessarily means there's a huge difference in opinion, but it's certainly a difference in messaging. If Barry Trotz decides that he is keeping Andrew Brunette, does he need to try to move Marchessault and take pennies on the dollar? I don't even know what is possible there, but is it to that extent or no?
I don't know if it's to that extent in terms of like it's an untenable situation. I don't know that it's that. What I do think would be fair to wonder is, like, does Barry Trotz look at the way it was on the ice this year and think to themselves, well, it's not a good mix in terms of the way not only the way you're trying to play, but the fits out there. Like, do you really need Forsberg, Stamkos, and Marchessault? Like, that's a lot of the same. Not that they're exactly the same type of players, but you're scoring wingers. Like, that's what, and they're all right-handed shots. Like, do you need that? And look, I heard DVD talking about this, and Elliot Friedman's brought this up. Like, Ray Ferraro in the preseason last year was just like, they got 3 guys that are right-handed shots. This is not going to work, and didn't work. So, like, do you look at it stylistically and say, all right, well, we need to bring somebody else in here who's either a centerman or is a left-handed shot that you could try to do different things with the way you attack in the offensive zone. So maybe from that standpoint, yeah, you could try to move him. I don't know that it's to the point where it's like, we got to get this guy out of here. Like I said, I think the direct nature that Marchessault approaches his work with sometimes can rub people the wrong way. I don't think that's always a bad thing. Like, I think if you're a good organization, you can handle some of that, and we'll see if they can handle it.
Yeah. Also, it helps if you play well.
Exactly. Well, that's the main thing. Like, they all
are you an asset on the ice?
Right. Look, system fit or not. Like, we can talk about system, and maybe the right thing here is to move on from Andrew Brunette and bring in somebody else that's a quote unquote better fit. Regardless of who your coach is, though, next year, like, it's on them to a certain degree to play better than they played this year. They all did not play well anywhere near consistently enough this year, regardless of the system.
After all this, I think I'm less convinced that Burnett's coming back.
I am. Yeah. I said it. I walked into that building on Friday. I don't know if convinced is the right word, but believing that Andrew Brunette was probably coming back as the head coach. And I walked out of there way less sure about that on Friday afternoon. Because, again, Marchessault and Stamkos saying this stuff to us in the media. What are they saying to Barry Trotz behind closed doors, and how much is that going to factor into the decision that Barry Trotz makes? That's a big part of this. Well, take more thoughts on the Preds, 615-737-1025. We'll hear from Andrew Brunette and what he had to say on Friday as well. Coming up next, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Yeah, I'm here to coach. Love my job, love my team until I'm told otherwise. I'm going to continue to work and become a better coach. And I think I'm an extremely competitive person. Sometimes it doesn't always come out that way, but and I think our group is an extremely competitive group. And we're not where we want to be. It was not from a lack of care or work. It just didn't happen. And myself and my staff, we're going to go back to work. And I think we're going to take a breath. We're going to analyze, find out what we can do better, where we can do better, what went wrong. Don't have all the answers right now. I think for me, just clear my head a little bit, but I'm looking forward to finding solutions. Like I said, I played a long time, and my path wasn't the easiest path. And what I loved about the game probably the most was finding ways. And this is a great challenge, and I can't wait to start. And if I'm told otherwise, I feel very confident in my ability to continue that path.
That's Andrew Brunette on Friday discussing his job status, which at the moment, Joe, is up in the air. We're supposed to hear from Barry Trotz later this week. I got a feeling it'll probably be somewhere in the midweek, so maybe Wednesday, Thursday, somewhere in that area. So we'll see what that looks like exactly from Barry Trotz. And again, if there's a decision that's been made by that point, I would hope, and as you brought this up earlier, I would hope that by the time the press conference comes around that he's decided whether or not Andrew Brunette's going to be the coach. Like, I don't really want to get up there and hear, well, we're still evaluating, and we'll have a decision here in a couple weeks. If you're Barry Trotz,
I'm calling for a media walkout if that happens. I'm calling for a media. All due respect, yeah, Barry, appreciate you, man. Let us know when you know something, and we'll come back and talk about everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
we'll see what happens on that front later this week. I said this earlier, and I think it's important. Like I do think we've heard from some Predators fans that have said, well, Brunette's coming back, and Barry Trotz has already made that decision. I do not have that vibe right now. Like, based on what the players have said, and frankly, based on Andrew Brunette, like Andrew Brunette seemed to know, and part of that answer was that, but really throughout his entire press conference Friday, like I think he knows that his future right now is totally up in the air. So I don't think that Barry Trotz has like made some decision yet that he and Andrew Brunette have been talking about for weeks that he's coming back. Now, did Barry Trotz was he leaning one way or the other coming into this process? Probably. I mean, I think it'd be surprising to me if he wasn't. But how does what he's uncovered when he's talked with his players and with Andrew Brunette at the end of the year, how does that influence what he does here?
So if he does fire, excuse me, if he does fire him, you believe then that the exit interviews probably tilted it the other way?
Well, I don't know if I would say it tilted it the other way. I would say the exit interviews are going to play a huge part in this. If he came in leaning towards bringing Andrew Brunette back, I do think the exit interviews could turn it the other way. I don't know that he's leaning that way though. Like he may be coming in leaning that he was going to move on, and the exit interviews just confirmed it. That could be the way that he's leaning. I could just tell you the sense I got based on some comments that Trotz had heading into this weekend was that it kind of felt like he was coming back.
Yeah.
But I don't know that.
Yeah. I mean, adding up all the public comments from Barry Trotz, it wasn't, I mean, he would always argue, Jared did a good job of asking him straight up, and he's like, no, you should not assume that, right? He's always been careful to not, to make clear that it's not a foregone conclusion, but I still would say all of the comments added together still sound like a GM was bringing his coach back.
Right. And then that gets into, well, number one, what's the reaction going to be if he's back? Because if he's back, like at the very least, if Andrew Brunette is back, clearly, based on the comments that the players have made, they got to do some major league tinkering here. And I think that's both from a roster standpoint and from the way they try to play. So I guess then the question becomes, if you're Barry Trotz and you're analyzing, let's say that's a baseline of reality of they got to change the way they operate here. Well, are you better off trying to change the way you operate with the coach you already have, or are you better off bringing in somebody who just naturally does something different? That's what I don't know. That's what you'd have to determine if you're Barry Trotz. But on the surface, Joe, I've got a hard time imagining you get through the end of this and saying, well, we need to totally change the way we play, and then you just leaving the coach the same. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
If you believe that, you have to make the move. Raymond on the text line says, how many more coaches Barry Trotz get to turn this around? He put together this roster with the right-handed shooters. He needs to own some of the blame. Yeah, I mean, it's going to plenty of sentiments in that direction lately, and that's all fair for sure on Barry Trotz. But right now, the first order of business is the coach, and that's always the first order of business in the NHL. And it's often a very quick order of business.
Well, and again, like some other things that I read into from the players about what the plan is this offseason is really interesting because, Barry Trotz has gone on with Stillman, and he's talked about it in his press conference settings of the plan is the plan. And, the plan is in pen and the path is in pencil and how you get there. And it's like, well, the more he talks about the plan, the more it makes it seem like it's always been like the younger guys coming up and waiting on the Matthew Woods and the Tanner Molendykes and the Joachim Kimmels of the world and those guys. And then, whatever the draft pick is going to be this summer. And I'm sure that's a big part of it. But like if I'm the veteran players, it's like, well, that's all great. What about winning right now? And from what Stamkos said, like Barry Trotz has laid out what he wants to do this offseason. The players seem to be on board with it based on what they've said. So I can't imagine that Barry Trotz has sold them on, hey, we're going to have a lot of young guys in the lineup next year. Like we're going to have a lot of young guys and it could be rough. I don't think he said that to the players because I don't think the players would be very receptive to that.
No, and it doesn't make any sense. That's not what you're doing. You're trying to win. You tried to win this year. You're trying to win next year. You just gave an 8-year deal to a 30-year-old goalie.
Yeah.
Like the time is now. That's why this season is such a disaster because the time was this year to win and not just make the playoffs, but be a factor in the playoffs. And instead, this happened.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you can't. Like there's no rebuild plan. You can't even execute that plan unless you just seriously want high-priced guys just aimlessly skating around for no reason.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to try to win.
I agree. And then the question becomes, how do you do that? Stamkos talked about, Barry Trotz to them behind closed doors, laying out his plan for free agency, laying out his plan on the trade market. I think they're going to try to pull off some trades this offseason. They got a lot of draft capital. They got a lot of assets. They have some cap space. So you're going to see them, if not pull one off that's pretty big, I think you're going to hear them in and around some rumors this offseason as it relates to a trade. Can they pull anything off? And what decision do they make with the coaching staff in the meantime?
And if they don't have a winning team that makes the playoffs and is a factor, then because Barry Trotz is going to need to pull off some stuff here to make it happen, and they're going to need a lot of guys to play better. But if not, then yeah, a year from now, there's a lot more to talk about Barry Trotz.
There is no doubt about that. That's going to do it for us today here on the program. We'll be back 6 a.m. tomorrow. Chase and Big Joe coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.